How many times have you started to learn something, then completely stopped? Well, I'm guilty of this for so many different things. Well, in this video, I want to share some types of information that I never want to learn and why I don't want to learn it. Because if you experience learning something and then stopping a week or two into it, it's because whatever you're learning falls into a category of you don't want to learn this type of information. It might sound good at the time, but you really don't want to learn it. So, for example, 100,000 digits of pi, a million digits of pi, 200 digits of pi. Doesn't matter the amount, but for me, I wouldn't want to learn, probably past 100 digits of pi. Why? Well, this information is completely useless. Okay, even in math, it's useless because you have a calculator that you could just push the pi button and do the math, right? You don't need to recall the digits of pi. There's no purpose to it. Yes, you might want to break the record or whatever it may be, but for me, there is no purpose here. There's no value beyond just memorizing. And so I wouldn't want to learn this because there's no way you could actually apply it or even bring it into conversation, right? Because people have to look it up on their phone in order to see if you're right. No one's going to know, 200 digits of pi because most people don't know it. And so you can just say random numbers. People are like, sure, that sounds right. And so for me, this is just purely memorization, right? That's all there is to it. There is no application. I know where it comes from, but even understanding where it comes from is not important. So there's like nothing here for me. Now, other people might find some value, but for me, it's just a whole bunch of random numbers, and that's all it is. If I want to do that, I'll just go to a memory competition or just train random numbers. Now, another type of information I wouldn't want to memorize are common names. So once upon a time, I did make a name system for common American names. So I think it was maybe like 600 altogether, maybe 700. And I made an image for each name, and then I would train it, kind of like a number system or a card system. Well, I wouldn't go out and memorize all the main names, or most common names, I should say, for all the different countries, because that's a lot of work. And then you have to kind of practice it like it's a system, right? Really get it down. So the problem here for me is that you're not really practicing the memory skill. You're only focusing on one specific thing, these names for this specific country, and that's it. Well, I am more concerned about getting the skill of changing any word, which is any name, into an image. And so I would rather practice that than trying to memorize specific names for specific countries. It just doesn't make any sense. That is why I would never memorize something like this, because it's just a huge time sink and there's not really that much benefit because there's no guarantee that you're going to get any of these names. That's the thing. When it comes to names, there's no guarantee that you're going to get one of these names. It's more likely, yes, but it's not guaranteed. So I really put my effort on the guaranteed skill, and that is changing any word into an image. Because regardless of any name I'm given, boom, I could create an image regardless if I have a pre-made image or not. So I'm speaking from experience. I don't even know what my name system is anymore. I assume a majority of those images I create for the names are kind of just stuck with me because I practice it so much, but I don't actively go through and try to review all my images for those different names and make sure that they're really clear, because I just rather have that system of, or the skill of changing random words into images. So that's why I would never go through or try to memorize the common names for all the different countries. Now, memorizing a book. Now I'm talking about trying to memorize a book word for word because people are so obsessed with that idea for whatever reason. I think it's because if you memorize the whole book and know it word for word, you're able to, pinpoint anything you want to learn from it or review and recall it perfectly. But I don't think that's right. So let's say you have a fiction book, fake, just a story. For me, I'd rather just enjoy the story that I'm reading, right? I don't want to really use memory techniques. I just want to kind of have it flow. Now, of course, if you're being quizzed or tested on it, like in school, it's a little bit different story. But let's just say you pick up a random book and want to read it. I wouldn't use any memory techniques because I just want to enjoy the story, and I'll put the extra work into like, okay, what's the plot? Who are the characters? Because at the end of the day, if I learn all that, guess what? Unless someone else read the book or wants to hear the book, it's pretty useless, right? And so there's not many chances you get to talk about the book. So for me, it doesn't make sense to memorize a fiction book. It's just a story. Enjoy the story. Now, nonfiction. So here is something, I guess, real, right? You get real information. So memorizing something that's real word for word has no benefit, because just because you could recall something exactly like it was in a book doesn't mean you understand it, doesn't mean you can apply it, doesn't mean you comprehend it, doesn't mean anything, right? So when it comes to nonfiction, if it's like a business book or a language book, whatever it may be, it's more important to be able to comprehend and analyze what you're learning and then apply it in some new way. So that's the main key, right? Now, I might use memory techniques to remember points here and there, but in terms of memorizing a book word for word, I would never do that. In terms of, I should say, I might do it for a challenge, okay? But in terms of trying to learn something from a book, I would never go to memorizing something word for word as the way to know what's in that book. It's just completely dumb. So I would never do that. So books are something I would never memorize word for word. Just seems like it's so much time. Of course, what kind of books, how many pages, words per page. So it's just a nightmare in terms of trying to memorize the book to begin with, right? So for me, it doesn't really make sense. Fiction, enjoy the story. Nonfiction, understand the concepts and try to apply them in some way. And then the last thing, or I guess one of the last things I would never memorize is every single day of my life, all the different things that happen. Okay, so people have talked about this. I was kind of interested in like, how could you do it? Like, is it even possible? But just think about it, if you're starting February 1st and you have the whole month of January you already memorized, you have to just start adding every single month and reviewing all of the different days. And that's just an insane amount of reviewing, and depending on how much information is within one day and what information you're trying to exactly memorize from each day, how many conversations, what you wore, food. Like, when you get down to it, it is just an insane amount of information that you could break every single day down into, right? And so for me, it doesn't make sense. I'd rather just kind of live my life and remember whatever main things happen throughout the week or month, because your brain's naturally going to kind of absorb every single thing out there that you experience. But of course, there'll be some moments that are more memorable and easier to remember than others. But of course, I talked about when you have the right trigger, anything could be recalled from your memory. Anything. And so for me, trying to memorize every single day of my life, it just seems like a nightmare in terms of how much time you're going to need to start reviewing all the information. How you're going to memorize it, probably some sort of memory palaces. You're constantly be creating memory palaces over and over and over. So essentially, for me, it seems like this will kind of take over your life because there's so much going on. Now, if someone has done it or done a very washed down version of it, I would love to hear it, because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's really easy, or maybe there's some benefit. But for me, at the end of the day, there's no benefit to knowing what happened, January 10th, 2018. Like, I have no idea what day that is, in terms of the different events in my mind. And so it must have not been that important or anything, so it's okay. So these types of information are types I would never try to memorize, because there's just no value, or the amount of time would be so much. The amount of effort and preparation is just insane. It just takes all of the fun out of it, because if I'm trying to learn something with memory techniques, I want to have fun with it, okay? I want it to be enjoyable, because if it sucks, and of course there's always going to be times where things that you're doing that you love to do, there's a sucky part to it, just, it is what it is. Like, I don't like waking up at 3:30 a.m. to go work out. I like working out. I hate getting up that early. It's just part of it, right? And so I want to enjoy it, but if I have something I'm learning that's just a chore, I'm like, oh man, I have to do this thing again. My mentality towards that information is, this sucks. I don't want to remember it, but I do, I do want to remember it, but I don't, because it's just a pain. It's going to be so much harder to actually learn it. And so now you have a little bit more insight on how I pick information I want to learn, and at least in terms of, I don't want to learn these specific types of information, but hopefully it gives you some insight to yourself on how you want to learn information, which information you want to learn, because you can't learn everything out there. Even though it'd be really cool if you can, you just can't. And so it's great for you to figure out what information you want to learn and what information you don't want to learn, because some things could be time sinks. Like, I even thought about, hey, let's try to memorize 100,000 digits of pi. I thought about that, but I was like, there's so many palaces I have to create. how many reviews or the reviewing schedule is gonna be a pain. So I actually thought about trying to memorize this, but at the end of the day, I was like, it's just too much work. What am I trying? What am I getting out of it? This is not breaking the record or anything. No one's gonna sit there and listen to 100,000 digits of pi. And so I realized it's worthless to me. Someone else, value. And I can't stress that enough. Maybe someone finds value in these different things, but I do not. There's not enough value for me to go out and actually start memorizing and trying to learn all these different things. There's just no value for me. Other people might have value. But yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this video and you got more insight into kind of how my brain works when it comes to actually learning information with memory techniques, because all these different things I would learn would have a memory technique aspect to it. Some things like a story, there's a lot of natural memory going on there, but I would still use memory techniques regardless if I needed to remember specific things about a fiction book. But yeah, so video's pretty long, a lot of information there, a lot of ranting, but hopefully you enjoyed it.